Just ready to learn, huh? Ready to dive right into it. Well, good. Good. Okay, so our topic today is going to be on the kind of the Utah topic. And we're going to talk about the real estate division, the real estate commission, and the administrative processes that they do here in Utah. So, and it's kind of a cool topic. I go to the Division of Real Estate Commission meetings most months because they talk about the new rules, and I want to hear the new rules as they're talking about them, as they're coming down the pipe, so that we can have them ready to add into our course, to have them update our textbook and everything. So I'm there a lot of the months. And this last month, for example, it's been a year since they added in the new requirement for the mandatory residential course. And so the course was designed to be updated every year with new rule updates and things like that. So they were talking about what do we want to add in? What do we want to change? What are the new pending issues in the industry right now? They talked a little bit about virus-related issues, because right now in the industry with the mask requirements and things like that, procedures are just a little bit different. But I think they decided that it's assumed that the virus won't affect us for more than about, I mean, it'll probably have really long-term consequences socially, right? But as far as like the regulations that require us in yellow or orange to be socially distant or to wear a mask if you go inside, those kind of regulations are not going to last more than about a year, we think. And so they decided not to add any of that kind of stuff into the mandatory course, because people will be taking this revised mandatory course all the way through the end of next year. And so they decided it might go beyond what made sense for this class. But I like that they're forward thinking, right? Right now it feels like the social distancing and everything, that's all so present, and we're all kind of getting tired of it. But at the same time, it's very relevant, right now. But it's not so relevant a year from now. So we hope, right? We hope that it's not going to be around that long, and we expect that the stricter requirements are not going to be around that long. So we're going to look further than that as we look at the mandatory course. So. But yeah, they've got some other regulations coming down, and so I'm there all the time. And actually, they've got their building closed, so they've been doing them all by Zoom, just like every meeting seems like. But even when they have the room open, it's kind of cool to go down to the Division of Real Estate, and you see the director there, you see the 5 commissioners there, you see the investigators there, and they talk about the recent investigations with complaints that have come in, and what they're going to do with different agents who have had different things brought up against them. And so it's kind of cool to hear those stories kind of as a cautionary tale, and to hear how people got themselves into trouble. A lot of times people get into trouble by accident, like they did something by accident that was against the rules, but still they have to be reminded and told to follow through. But sometimes they do things on purpose. And usually they're not too serious, but occasionally they're serious. I think we talked last week about one big thing that went down with a trust account with funds going to the wrong place. But those bigger cases are kind of fewer and farther between, which is nice. Mostly you see people trying to do right, trying to do good, and either misunderstanding or having something happen that they didn't intend. So that's usually good. It's mostly good people out there working. So that's good. But let's go ahead and dive into some of the topics that you might see on the license exam. So let's see here. All right. Okay, so we've got a question here which says, D has been buying new houses, and instead of selling his old houses, he has rented them each. He now has 6 houses he owns that he is renting and managing on his own. So which is true? So this is going to be a question about essentially whether he needs his license or not. So our options are A, D needs a real estate license. B, what D is doing is illegal. C, what D must be an attorney. Or D, which is D, does not need a real estate license. So what do you think?
D.
D does not need a real estate license.
Yes.
So you're saying we do not need a real estate license to buy and rent our own property. Is that what we're saying? Well, that's accurate. If you buy houses for yourself, or you sell your house, or you own houses that you want to rent directly, then you don't need a real estate license. Now, if D hired somebody, like if he hired me to manage his properties, then that would require a real estate license for me because I am managing somebody else's property. But if you're managing your own property, then no license is needed. You don't need to be an attorney. You don't have to be licensed to do your own transactions. So good job. Okay, how about this one? B has a real estate license, but it's currently inactive. They sold their house and bought a new one, which is true. So this is a little bit similar to the other one, but this is someone who actually has a real estate license, but that's inactive. So what do you think? A says that he should have activated his license before buying or selling. Or the second one says that he does not need an active license to buy or sell their own home. Or C says they must consult a broker before buying or selling a home. Or D, they must take continuing education before buying or selling a home. So it's pretty much the same as the last one. At least the concept is the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so B does not need an active real estate license to buy or sell their own home.
Their own home.
Yeah. Now, if they do have to disclose that they have a license.
Right.
So if you're selling your own home and it's not going through the brokerage, then you do need to put on their owner agent or owner broker or whatever you are, so that people know that you have a real estate license. Because as a real estate licensee, even if your license is inactive, you still have to disclose that you have a real estate license when you're selling your own property. So that's important to note. And this another question that comes up sometimes when selling your own property when you have a real estate license is, when you're working as an agent, sometimes you can represent the buyer, sometimes you can represent the seller, and sometimes you can represent both, kind of in a limited capacity, right? Where you facilitate the transaction, but you're not able to give the full fiduciary duties to both sides.
Right.
So, but if it's property that you own that you are trying to sell, then you're not able to represent the buyer for your property because there's no way for you to be neutral in any capacity if you own the property on one side. So it's completely illegal for you to represent somebody else to buy your property. So that's or the other way around. If you are buying somebody's property, you can't represent them to sell you their property. But you can still represent yourself. You can still do a transaction with them unrepresented if that's what they choose. But just don't ever try and represent both sides if you're involved on one side. All right, talking about the commission. So the Utah Real Estate Commission is appointed by who?
Governor.
The governor?
Governor.
Yeah. Okay, good. How about who defines standards of conduct for real estate brokers?
The Real Estate Commission.
Real Estate Commission, not the Attorney General or the Director of the Division of Real Estate?
Real Estate Commission.
Yeah, the Real Estate Commission. Good. Okay, well then who creates rules for property management companies? Is that one trickier?
Yeah.
Well, it's still real estate activity. And so it's actually the same license to do sales as to do property management. And it's the same license to do residential as is to do commercial. That's all in the same license. So it's going to be the same body, the same real estate commission,
Real Estate Commission
that does the rules for property management companies as well. They did have some separation between property management and sales in the past. And I guess there is still some, there's some little rules about that. Like if you have property management and sales and you manage more than 6 properties, then you have to have a separate trust account for property management, right? So there's a few distinctions like that, but when it comes to who creates the rules, it's still the Real Estate Commission. And actually, let's dig into that after this question. Let's dig into a little more of that organization. So the director of the Division of Real Estate. So we talked about the Real Estate Commission was appointed. So now who appoints the director of the Division of Real Estate?
The Department of Commerce.
That's right. It's the executive director of the Department of Commerce. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some of that. I'm going to jump ahead one real quick here. So we've got our governor, right? The governor, he's king. So we've got our governor, and then we've got our legislature, our state legislature, who are the Utah State Congress and Utah State Senate, right? They are the ones who make the laws for our state, Utah state laws, right? And they and sometimes we call that criminal law. So like if you break a law, you go to court, you stand before a judge, sometimes you get a jury, sometimes you get a prosecutor and a defense attorney. All of that is in the criminal courts, so we call those laws sometimes criminal laws. And I've got those over on the side here because that's a little bit different than what we deal with within the world of real estate, within the world of licensing. So where did real estate licenses come from? If you think back on that, why does the state license people to get to practice real estate? And it all basically comes down to somebody, a member of the public, got taken advantage of because somebody else wanted to represent them to sell their property, and they did something, either they took half their value, or have you ever heard the stories about landlocked properties that have no road access or no water that somebody buys unseen? There's all kinds of bad deals that went on many, many years over, a long time ago. So the main point of all of our licensing and such is to be able to regulate it to some degree so that a member of the public, someone buying their own home, because your own house is a little bit more of a it's a little bit more of a right. You have a right to live somewhere safe. You have a right to have space of your own. And so your own living space is something they decided to protect a little more. And so that's where we came up with departments and divisions and licenses to kind of regulate that and control it. And it helps me to think through it that way to kind of decide, okay, is this going to be a criminal law matter, or is this going to be a licensing matter? Is this specifically, I'm getting a license to protect my clients so that they have a way to find me and hold me accountable if I hurt them? And that's what this is kind of all about, kind of protecting them. So the state set up the Department of Commerce, okay? And underneath that, we have the Division of Real Estate, and the Division of Real Estate, like we just talked about, is all about protecting the public, making sure that they have rules that keep things in check so that they don't get taken advantage of. So underneath them, we've got the director of the Division of Real Estate. And now you kind of see a chain here. We've got the Department of Commerce, and underneath that is the Division of Real Estate. And underneath that is the director of the Division of Real Estate. Our current director of the Division of Real Estate's name is Johnny Stewart. And if you attend the commission meetings, you'll see him. But I like to call the Division of Real Estate, in a nice way, the real estate police, right? Most of us only interact with the police on traffic stops, and so we kind of get annoyed at them because we're embarrassed that we're breaking traffic laws. But most of the time, police are there to protect us, right? They're there to enforce the laws. And in this case, the Division of Real Estate is the real estate police. They are there to make sure that all of us licensees walk the straight and narrow path, So, and underneath them, they've got their licensing staff and their investigators that work there. So we've kind of talked about where people get assigned, and that's where we bring in the Real Estate Commission. And the Real Estate Commission, like we've talked about, is appointed by the governor. Okay. And they make the rules. And that's a nice distinction. The Real Estate Commission makes the rules for us real estate agents, But that's different than the laws, the criminal laws that the legislature creates. So if you break the law, even if you're a real estate agent, you're still going to be held accountable to criminal law. You'll still go before a judge. You'll still, depending on the nature of your crime, you know, you could get a misdemeanor or a felony, whatever that is. But that's still criminal law. That's still in effect. But a little more specifically to real estate, we have the Real Estate Commission who makes the rules for all of us agents. And if you go onto the division website, you actually see a distinction there. You've got the statutes that are the laws, and then you've got the rules specifically for real estate agents. And our licensing staff, our investigators, they're the ones who enforce those rules that the Real Estate Commission made. So when they ask me questions on the test, like, what's the maximum penalty for this, or what happens if I break this law or that law? If I know it's a criminal law, then I know it's going to go to the courts. If it's a license rule, then I know it's going to go through the licensing staff and the real estate commission who would handle the hearings and things like that. So talking about the real estate commission, we have making rules like we just talked about. And then we've got 5 members, if you remember, and they all have to come from different counties. And 4 of them have to be real estate professionals. That means a real estate agent or a real estate broker. And then 1 other member is from the general public. Now, usually they pick somebody who understands the industry to some degree. So they'll usually pick someone in a related industry. So it's not a real estate licensee. It's not a real estate broker, but it is often, usually, like a mortgage lending officer or a title person, or maybe an appraisal professional. Usually it's someone like that in a related industry, so they do have knowledge of the industry, but they come from outside so that we get kind of that outside perspective. I think it's kind of a clever way to set it up that way. But these 5 people, they're volunteer, they're appointed by the governor, and they're the ones who make the rules. So if you think there's a rule that shouldn't be in effect, or you think there should be a new rule, they're the ones that you would talk to and say, hey, I think we ought to make this rule. Okay. And if you if there's a complaint filed against you and it's serious enough, then they might actually hold a hearing. In fact, anything that requires that you get your license suspended or revoked, they're going to hold a hearing on to make sure they're doing it right. So if you've ever been to a hearing, it's basically they sit up like judges and then you appear before them, and you can even bring a lawyer if you want to. And the real estate division staff, the investigators, they come and present the case against you, and then you or your attorney present the case on your side, and then they make a final decision whether your license is going to be suspended or revoked if necessary. So they're the ones that do all that. And it's a little bit of a thankless job. It's kind of like they get to hear all the bad stories and make the hard decisions, setting up fines and things on people. And I mean, it can be kind of a hard thing to just seeing all of the problems in the industry. You know, that's what they keep getting presented with. Here's the problems that we're dealing with. So a lot of times it can be kind of a thankless position to be on the commission, but we have some really good commissioners right now. So it's been good to see them working with the division. All right, so that's the Real Estate Commission. Did that clear anything up? Is that helpful to kind of see it in that organization? You know what, actually, let me just show you real quick the Division of Real Estate website. So if you go to realestate.utah.gov here, so you can see this is the Department of Commerce, Division of Real Estate. They do appraisal, mortgage, real estate, etc. But if you come right here to the real estate tab, you can actually find the law and the rules right here. So the Real Estate Licensing and Practices Act, you can just click right on that, and here's all the laws. You can click in a little deeper and say, okay, who's exempt from licensure? And here it is in nice, clear English. Just kidding, it's not clear. Laws are never written so easy to read and clear, are they? But here it is, you can look it up. So for example, an exemption for someone to get a license is a, let's see, trying to find an easy one. a regular salaried employee of a condominium homeowners association who manages real estate for the homeowners association. Okay. So that's exempt by the laws that the legislature created. Now, if we come back here, we can look into the actual rules. So now this is the rules that the division made. And you see things here like what are the sales agent licensing requirements? What are the broker licensing requirements? What are the trust account requirements, gifts and inducements, stuff like that. So here's all those rules. So if you wanted to look up a real estate rule, you have access to it right here. Just go here and look it up. Or you can ask someone who knows a little more and they can point you in the right direction. And I look at these so often, I can track them down pretty quick now. But over here on this side, you can actually see who's on the commission. So here's your commission members right here. You've got their phone numbers directly. So you can just give them a call, send them a letter. You know, you have access to these public servants. So they're there for us to help us out. And they also have down here the public notices. So right here, you can see the schedule of, so here's the agenda of the last commission meeting. It was August 19th. This is what they did in the meeting, who was present. And so you can find all that stuff here. And not only that, you can get a recording of the meeting. So right here, you can pull this up, listen to the commission meeting yourself, hear what they had to talk about. For me, it's a lot more interesting when it's actually going on. So I usually try and do it in person, but it's all there for you. So here you thought I had secret access to all this stuff. Well, a lot of it's right here in the public domain. So just go and jump into it if you want to. Let's see, where did we put that? Okay, back to this. Any questions about that? Here I am acting like it's all cool and you guys are like, It is kind of cool, but hopefully it's not something you have to look up that often. Hopefully you can learn everything you need to in the pre-license course and then go practice and never hear from the division or the commission again, right? You never hear from the police when you're doing the right thing, right? And that's kind of what we want from the division. Okay. All right, so this question says, the Utah Division of Real Estate is authorized to regulate what? Interest rates, mortgage lending officers, real estate commissions, home prices. What do they regulate?
Mortgage lending officers.
Yeah, mortgage lending officers. Now, one interesting thing I see in this question, which I think is a reason that I've seen it in questions like this, is the real estate commissions. And I think that's because there's a common perception in the industry that there's a standard commission amount, that there's a normal commission amount, that there's a set commission amount. And so I've noticed that the division has tried to make it very clear to new licensees that there is no regulation about the amount of real estate commissions. Now, in the wide marketplace, you do see that people tend to price similarly just because they want to be competitive. So you do see similar prices out there. But you can charge whatever you want. You can charge 10%, 20% if you want. You can charge 1% if you want. You can work for free if you want. I don't recommend it. It's hard to make a living, but you can, right? So the Division of Real Estate doesn't set commission amounts, and that's something that they try and point out a lot. But mortgage, title, appraisal, those are all real estate related industries. Those are all regulated by the Division of Real Estate, and those are all questions that you might see when you're looking at the exam. Okay, who is primarily responsible for enforcing the rules and statutes related to real estate transactions? We did kind of talk about this in our and when I kind of broke out the organization, but we've got the Attorney General, we've got the Division of Real Estate, we've got the Utah Legislature, and we've got your principal broker. What do you think? Is this one a little tougher? Well, yes, what's that?
I'm going to guess Division of Real Estate.
Okay, yeah. Yep, the Division of Real Estate, because they are the enforcers. They are the police of the industry. Now, if it was laws about, criminal conduct, then that would go back to the Attorney General who enforces that. The Utah legislature makes the rules, but the Attorney General enforces the criminal laws. But when it comes to licensing rules and statutes on transactions, it is the Division of Real Estate. Okay. Of course, your principal broker better be keeping an eye on you to make sure that you're following those rules, because otherwise, he's held responsible too. Because you remember the clients are actually legally, they're going to be represented by your broker, and then you are going to represent your broker to help that client. So it's actually kind of a little triangle whenever you're working with a client. And so your principal broker is going to be keeping an eye on you and trying to make sure that you follow the rules. But ultimately, it's the Division of Real Estate who's going to hold both of you responsible if you do make a mistake. Now, one common mistake I've seen, for example, is there's a rule that says that you have to have your brokerage listed on your advertisement, right? All your advertisement has to have your brokerage name there, so that the public knows that it's being represented by a brokerage company. Now, I've seen advertisements placed on various websites, such as like uh, um, the classified ads. They'll put home listings on classified ads, and sometimes those websites like KSL, for example, sometimes they change the way things are displayed, and sometimes when it changes how it's displayed, if you didn't put the information in the right place, like if you put your brokerage in a field that wasn't part of the description or wasn't part of the public information displayed, then it might not show your brokerage name on the ad that's displayed on KSL to the public, which is a problem, because the rule says you have to have your brokerage displayed there. Now, is it their fault that your brokerage is not displayed? Well, debatable, but it is your responsibility with your license to make sure that your brokerage is always displayed wherever your advertisements are. So if they change their format, then you have to go in and make sure you update it in such a way that your brokerage will show up there. But that's an example where sometimes somebody put an ad up, they changed the format that they display, and now the brokerage wasn't showing. So it wasn't directly the agent or the broker's fault, but it's still a against license rule for that not to be displayed there. And I have seen occasionally a fine given to agents for not having their brokerage displayed there. Usually the commission's pretty understanding, and they say if it's not displayed there and this was the first time and we can see that it was not intentional, sometimes they'll let you go with a warning. But if it's a repeat offense, then for sure they're going to ding you with a fine. And actually most repeat offenses end up being probation or potentially a license suspension. So they don't look too kindly on it if you do it twice. Doing it once, they can understand sometimes that it wasn't your fault, but can't do it twice and get away with it. Okay, the Board of Realtors is a private association of real estate professionals that what? Does it enforce a code of ethics? Is it led by the Real Estate Commission? Does it have regulatory authority? Does it administer real estate licensing? What's the Board of Realtors?
A.
A, enforces a code of conduct. Yeah, in fact, even the word realtor is a private trademark. So just like we were talking about, how people, just because of a general industry assumption, people think there's a certain commission range. Also, people sometimes assume that the Board of Realtors is a regulatory authority, that it's linked to the Division of Real Estate somehow. But it is just a private organization. Now, it does have a large influence in the industry. I'm a member of the Board of Realtors. A lot of agents are members of the board, but you don't have to be in order to have a real estate license and practice real estate. Legally, there is no requirement to be part of the Board of Realtors. Now, they do have a large influence, like they own the multiple listing service that most people choose to use. And therefore, if you want, working as a real estate agent, if you want your properties to show on their multiple listing service, then you would have to become a member of the Board of Realtors in order to do that. And so they do have kind of a large influence in the market, but they're not regulatory at all. If you become a member of the Board of Realtors and you break their rules, you do something that's against the rules of the Board of Realtors, then what can they do to you? Can they take away your license? Can they stop you from working in the industry anymore? They can't. They have no authority over your license. What they can do though is they can issue you fines from their association only. They can kick you out of their association, which might mean you're not able to list things on the multiple listing service anymore. But none of that affects your ability to legally represent people and do real estate transactions. And there's other markets that don't get involved with the Board of Realtors so much. For example, a lot of the commercial real estate that goes on, uh, commercial office buildings, large apartment buildings, a lot of those kind of commercial transactions that happen, strip malls, stuff like that. Some of that does go through the multiple listing service with the Board of Realtors, and some of those agents are uh, members of the Board of Realtors, but a lot of them aren't, because the multiple listing service deals a lot with residential properties. And so the commercial industry, commercial real estate, a lot of that is kind of outside the Board of Realtors. And so you see less of that in there. So, but the point when it comes to the exam about the Board of Realtors is that it's a separate entity, that it's a private organization, that they only have control over their membership and their multiple listing service. They are not the division of real estate. They can't give you criminal fines. They can't take away your license. Those are the things that you'll want to know for the exam and as you get into the industry. You know, it's funny, even agents who are uh, that have been in the industry a few years, sometimes they still sometimes get confused about the difference between the two. For example, there's a new rule for the multiple listing service from the Board of Realtors that just came up, where it's less than a year old. This new rule, it's called clear cooperation is the rule, and basically what it says is that you have to, once you sign a listing agreement with a seller, you have to put that property on the multiple listing service within 1 business day, I believe, of getting the listing. And in my last advertising class I was teaching, I had an agent ask me about that, thinking that it was a division of real estate law, but it wasn't. It was a rule from the Association of Realtors. So if you didn't follow that policy, your license is fine, but you might not be able to use the multiple listing service as much. So there's a little bit of a distinction. So that's the important point when you talk about the Board of Realtors. And their code of ethics, I would say, might be their biggest selling point aside from the MLS, because everyone who joins the Board of Realtors basically agrees to work together with other agents. So if you have a buyer agent on one side and a seller agent on the other side, the Board of Realtors, you both agree ahead of time that you're going to work together. So you both share commissions or whatever it is that you do there. So that's kind of the biggest benefit to the Board of Realtors, is it has agents agree to work together. And when I talked about the commercial real estate business, how that's kind of outside the Board of Realtors, it's a little bit more of the Wild West in those commercial transactions. You kind of got to do a little more looking out for yourself, making sure that you get your name on the listing agreement and things like that to make sure that you get paid for your work, because businesses buying and selling from each other aren't as closely regulated as residential transactions. So kind of like we talked about before, residential transactions, the government wants to make sure that families aren't taken advantage of. They want to make sure that you still have a home to live in and that it's protected and that you don't lose everything to an unscrupulous realtor. But businesses, they give a little more latitude to. People, your family with your private home, they don't assume that you know a lot about real estate transactions. They don't assume that you have a lot of experience in the industry. So they want to protect you from that lack of knowledge. But businesses, on the other hand, the government assumes businesses know a little bit more about what they're getting into, that they're going to do their research, that they're going to hire their own attorneys, that they're going to do everything to protect themselves. So they're a little bit less regulated. So for example, if you are renting a house and you stop paying your rent, say you lost your job because of the virus or whatever, right? You lose your job. There's been a lot of new rules coming out, like the eviction moratorium, if you've heard of that, or things like that where they've said you can't evict people. Or even if you do want to evict somebody, there's certain procedures you have to follow. You can't just kick people out on the street. And that's to protect people, protect families, so that we all have a safe place to live. But a business is a little bit different. If a business is in a strip mall and they quit paying their rent, no matter even whatever the circumstance, they don't have nearly the same level of protections. The owner of that building can evict them a lot easier than a private family in a private residence. So it's a lot stricter regulations on residential real estate to protect them. And that's kind of our job as agents, right? That's what we learn about with our fiduciary duties, so that that's our job, is to protect them. That's our value that we provide. We help them to make sure they inspect properties, right? To make sure that they understand if there's any problems with properties before they buy them. That's all the value that we provide to our clients, is to protect them as they buy this huge investment in their lives. So that, long story short, the Board of Realtors is a private organization. Licensure is mostly to protect the public. And if you are doing commercial stuff, then watch out for your boots and take care of yourself. All right, next question. When the Division of Real Estate receives a complaint from the public against a licensed agent, they will notify the agent of the complaint. And how many days does the agent have to respond to that complaint? They do like to ask some numbers, don't they, on the course and in the exam. They have 10 days to respond. Okay. When you're looking at numbers like this in the course, there's kind of two main numbers you want to remember. One is 10 days and the other is 30 days. So 10 days applies. That's how long you have to respond, in this case, to a question. But that would also be how much time you have to notify the division if you've changed your name or changed your primary address or changed brokerages. That's all 10 days. So 10 is a number that you want to remember. And then 30 days is another number. We'll see if that one comes up here. Okay, when two brokers have a dispute over commissions earned, the Division of Real Estate will do what? So A says they will take no part in disputes about commissions unless license law was broken. B says they will put the broker's licenses on probation until the dispute is resolved. C says they will hold a hearing before the commission. And D says they will side with the selling broker. So what will the Division of Real Estate do? A, they do not get involved in commission disputes. That is their, so who would get involved in a commission dispute? What do you do if you have a commission dispute with your broker? Who would you get involved?
A court.
A court, yeah, like employment laws maybe. If you're an employer of your broker, then you could go based on employer rules. Most agents are independent contractors though, and so those rules are a little bit looser. But yeah, if your broker doesn't pay you commissions, then you would go to court. Or if you're, like we talked about in the Association of Realtors, the Board of Realtors, where they agree to cooperate together. And if one side collects commissions and doesn't pay the other side their share of the commissions, then the Association of Realtors actually does do some self-policing. So you could submit a complaint to the Association of Realtors if you're both members of the association, and then they would help you mediate a dispute on that because you had, through their organization, agreed to cooperate. But barring that, yeah, you can just take it to court. They signed a contract to agree to pay me money, and they didn't pay me money, so now it's a court hearing for a business arrangement. So, but as long as you sign all the contracts properly, as long as you follow the rules as you're supposed to, you're pretty protected. Okay, how about this one? If trust funds are mishandled, the Division of Real Estate can do what? They freeze the trust account. Can they ignore it on a first offense? Will they protect the broker from a lawsuit? Can they issue a cease and desist order? What can the Division of Real Estate do on a trust account?
D.
Yeah, they can issue a cease and desist order. They don't have regulatory authority to control bank accounts or to, freeze the trust account. And they're definitely not going to ignore it because that's one of your primary responsibilities is to handle your client's money. Um, but they can issue a cease and desist order while they issue their fines and while they figure it out. Did I tell you that story about a brokerage who, I probably told it last week already or the week before, 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. But there was an issue recently where a office manager for a brokerage stole money out of the trust account. And then when the brokerage found out about it, they immediately replaced the money in the trust account. They didn't have the original money that was gone, but they took their own money, put it into the trust account to cover their clients. And then the Division of Real Estate still said, we're glad you did that, but you still weren't watching the trust account well enough, so we're going to give you a fine. But because you immediately replaced the money and none of your clients were harmed because you did replace the money, it's going to be a much smaller fine, and we're going to let you keep your license because we can see that it was unintentional. But if they came back and had another problem happen again, it would be much stricter. So it was a lot of money. That one was $140,000, I think, that went missing from the trust account. So it can be a lot of money on the line. All right. When the Division of Real Estate receives a complaint from the public that a broker used trust account money for their own business expenses, what would they do? Investigate and hold a hearing? Will they keep the complaint but wait until something more serious occurs? Will they remove all agent licenses from the brokerage or automatically turn the case over to the Attorney General? Well, they're definitely going to investigate and probably hold a hearing depending on the severity of it. So what's going on here? So a trust account is client money, right? It's the customer's money that you're holding in escrow in case something goes south. So it's not your money. So if the brokerage takes that money and starts using it for their business expenses, then they've stolen the money. That's what it is, right? They've stolen it. So that's obviously wrong. And so the division will investigate, hold a hearing, and then they will determine if any other punishment is necessary. Okay. More numbers. Division of Real Estate may issue a written notice to correct their behavior of an agent. So if they'll have a maximum of how many days to correct their behavior. Now remember, we talked about this. The two numbers you really need to remember is 10 or 30. So in this case, it's probably going to be one of those two. Which one do you think it is?
C.
C.
Yeah. 30. Yeah, just remember those two numbers and you'll get most of those answers correct. Okay, if an agent breaks a real estate rule or statute, who would they may go before a hearing? The Real Estate Commission? Yes, the Real Estate Commission. And if an agent is called to appear before the Real Estate Commission in a hearing for a complaint against them, then which is true? They have to appear alone, appear with a broker. They may bring legal counsel. Yep, that's right. You probably want to pick a specific type of attorney because a lot of criminal attorneys are used to dealing in criminal law, but the Real Estate Commission hearings are slightly different because they're more regulatory and less criminal. The procedures are a little different, so you'd want an attorney that works specifically with real estate rules so they know how to handle it. But yeah, you can always bring legal counsel even when it's just a regulatory issue like that. And if an agent breaks a rule, the Real Estate Commission can do what?
Impose fines.
A.
Yep, just impose fines. They don't have tax authority. They don't have foreclosure authority. They don't have jail authority, just fines. Now, if you broke a law, something more serious like committed fraud, then they would probably refer you over to the Attorney General and they would prosecute on those terms. And then at that point, you could potentially go to jail or whatever if it was serious enough. But if it's just a Real Estate Commission rule and you break that rule, they can do fines. What else can they do?
Cease and desist.
Suspend. Suspend.
Cease and desist. They can revoke your license.
Mm-hmm.
They can also require additional continuing education, usually specific to the rule that you broke. So if you broke an advertising rule, then they would assign you a few hours of advertising law classes, things like that. That's their typical punishment that they do. When a licensee is found guilty of fraud, the Real Estate Commission can impose, and we kind of just talked about that, right? Fines and license revocation. They can't seize property, they can't do jail time, but like I said, if you actually committed fraud, they would then probably refer you on, and more might happen. But the Real Estate Commission wouldn't be able to do more than that. That's all they can do. And there you go. If they're jailed for how can they be jailed for fraud? If they're found guilty before the commission, if they plead guilty at the Division of Real Estate, no, it's only if they are tried through the justice system. And the Real Estate Commission can impose fines up to what amount per violation? Sorry, this one didn't fall into your 1030 rule. This is a different number.
B?
B 1,000?
Maybe.
No.
C 10,000? Per violation to, it's only 5,000. But if an agent commits multiple violations that they're being tried for, then it would be 5,000 per violation. And some of those numbers you just got to memorize. Okay, I think, yep, that's the end of the questions I had there. So any other questions come up as we were talking through these? I know some of this topics dealing with the commission, the division. It's not quite as interesting as some of the other contract law or agency law, but it is stuff that they test you on and you need to know to get licensed. So I hope this was a good reminder.
It was. Hey, I have a question for you. Is this the format that the test will be presented in, like the actual licensing test?
You mean the questions, like the 4 answer questions?
Yeah.
Yes. All of the entire license exam is multiple choice questions with only 4 possible answers, and you just select one of the 4 answers and move on. All of the questions are like that, so that you don't have to do any fill in the blank. There's not going to be any true false, no essays or anything like that. It's all multiple choice 4 answers.
Okay.
Okay, I see a question that came a lot earlier that I don't know if I covered or not, but Yovis asked, why is it important to disclose you have a real estate license? So I think that was referring back to when I am selling my own property, and I have to, because I have a license, I have to disclose that I have a license. So it is a rule. So that's the simple answer. The rule is you have to disclose. But the reason for the rule is that they want to protect the public. And one way they do that is they make sure that the public knows if the person on the other side of the transaction is an expert. So in this case, if you have a real estate license, then you have to disclose that to the other person on the other side of the transaction so that they know that you have been licensed to work on these transactions. And that way they also know that if you do something that you shouldn't have, then they can go to the real estate division with it instead of going direct to small claims court or suing or anything like that. So the main reason for the rule of disclosing if you have a license is just to protect them so that they know that you have knowledge, that you've become licensed, and so that so they can better follow up if anything goes south. But we all know nothing's going to go south in your transactions, so everything should be great. Any other questions tonight before we move on? I mean, I guess we're done for the night if there's nothing else.
I have a question. I was taking a test through or I guess going through the agency part of the course,
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of confused on some of them when they were talking about the dual agency versus like the one where where I guess the person's acting on both sides. But then earlier you mentioned how that's a big no-no, so I was kind of confused on that.
Okay, so so what I was saying earlier is that if I'm on one side of the transaction, then I can't be a dual agent. I can't represent both sides if I am one of those sides. Uh, my personal property, that's what I'm saying. If I'm buying a property or if I'm selling a property, then I can't represent the other side because there's no way I could be impartial against myself. You know what I mean? Um, but if you are representing two other people, that's legal. You can represent both sides, buyer and seller, as long as you're not personally invested in the property itself. So, so yes, I can represent both sides. And of course, on the fiduciary duties list, I can still hold their information confidential, but I can't be loyal to either side if I'm representing both. And I can't give full disclosure to both sides if I'm representing both. If, like, I'm not going to tell the seller that the buyer is on a timetable to get out of their apartment because that'll hurt their negotiating position. And I can't tell the buyer that the seller can't afford to pay their next mortgage payment because they, because they lost their job. That's private information that's not relevant to the transaction. And usually, like if I was only representing one side, if I'm only representing the buyer and I find out something about the seller, then I definitely want to tell that to my buyer because that's who I represent, and so that they have a better negotiating position. But if I'm representing both sides, then I can't give full disclosure. So you're a little bit limited when you're representing both sides. But if they agree to it, then yeah, that's perfectly legal. Now, I said do disclose, don't disclose. If it comes to something that's like a defect in the property, you have to disclose that either way. But if it's just personal information that's not directly relevant to the property, then that's the sort of thing that you would hold private for your own client or disclose to your own client if you found it out about the other side for if you think it'll affect the transaction.
Okay, here's a segue to that. Would this kind of fall, let's say somebody does a mistake where they kind of break those rules. Is this kind of something where those investigators would come in and then prove, hey, this so-and-so agent did all of these infractions, and then is that kind of how that works, or am I thinking it incorrectly?
Yeah, that's right. So if I did that, if I broke some of those rules, either my client or the agent on the other side, whoever knew about the transaction, they could submit a complaint to the Division of Real Estate, and then they would assign it to one of their investigators. The investigator would gather all the facts from the people who were involved in the transaction. They would probably reach out to me at some point and get my side of the transaction, and they would look at all the facts and then decide if a rule really was broken, and if so, they make a recommendation for fines or whatever to the real estate commission, and then they give that to the real estate commission and they make the final decision on what would happen to me. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Any last questions before we wrap up here? Well, hey, I know that that this information is what you need to get started. Once you get past the real estate course, this is like a beautiful stepping stone onto the beginning of your career. Once you get this foundation under you, then you can jump out there and you can start to work. You can start to help people, and the more you help people, the more you make. And you can't help but if you create value in the market, you just can't help but be compensated for it. So I'm excited to have you all go out and make a difference for people. Okay, well, thanks for being here. Appreciate you. 2 weeks from now, we'll do another one of these and hope to see you then.
Cool, thank you.